Guys, my name is Girish, your host for today at Back to Basics. I hope you enjoyed the last week's episode, and this week's episode is going to be a little as exciting as last week's. So this episode is all about finance. How do you save money? How do you make yourself bankrupt? How do you do everything all in one? And you got life insurance, you got 401ks, and all the different aspects and topics that we're going to talk about. Maybe you might already know the answer, but it seems like that some people are not aware, and we're trying to make awareness to this episode to help other people out with that. And there might be some minute thing that maybe you missed during growing up time, and growing times. Okay. And things are different now. Before, you have an example of buying a bread for $1 and now you have $3. Okay. So things are different now due to pandemic and all that. So we're trying to make awareness. And our guest today, her name is Kirsten Garnosis. I hope I pronounced it right, but we will correct that when we get on the show. But her knowledge of finance is just amazing. So I spoke with her a couple of weeks back, maybe 3 weeks back, I'm not sure when, but it was just amazing when I spoke with her, and she was very sure that she wanted to be on the show to make awareness of that. So Kristen, thank you for coming on the show.
Hi, Girish. My name is Kirsten Granados. I so appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all today, and it is my honor to be here and able to shed a tiny grain of sand and some light on things that many of us maybe we knew or maybe we were supposed to know, but due to our different paths in life, it could have been forgotten for a lot of us to just be aware of some of these concepts. I'm so excited and grateful for the opportunity to be here with you.
So tell me the first question before we get into the basics, okay? What is your back to basic moment regarding finance?
I appreciate you asking that. For me, it was back when I was in real estate development. So to give a little bit of backstory, I have been in financial services sector for a little over 5 years. However, before that, I was in real estate development working alongside my father in his business. He'd worked with investors over 25 years. And there was a moment after I had recently finished working with a client that there was a disconnect between things that they should have known and then things that were affecting them as a business owner, and realized, wow, how many families are out there in America like this dear friend of mine that are encountering these consequences due to having this gap in knowledge and financial literacy overall.
So when did you start this, or how did you come up with this whole network of your bubble?
So I was very grateful to be introduced to the industry actually by a great friend of my father. She was also previously in luxury real estate sector.
Mm-hmm.
And after shifting into this area, she shared with me the value and many priceless concepts that I should have known and I wasn't quite aware of. I was navigating and just blindly kind of designing my financial future by what I would hear in terms of this coworker, a friend, and realize, no, it's time to take accountability and design a blueprint, have more clarity, have more understanding of what's right for my situation.
So basically, that was your back to moment and to get into this field the way you are today. So, uh, so let me ask you this: is there such thing as a good debt?
That is a great question. I will definitely say that it depends. A lot of times, it depends in terms of the situation and circumstances. When it comes to equity and building equity and ultimately that legacy with a home, yes, that is a good type of debt, having that mortgage. However, in terms of some people say, well, I pulled out this amount of my 401k in order to make this move. think about it. Is there an opportunity to recover from that withdrawal? So it all depends on the position that person is in. I'm aware some people, they've done that in order to push their kids through Ivy League. And I say, well, there is a student loan, but there is no such thing as a retirement loan. So
Yeah.
please be aware of this.
So here's another twist to that, right? I mean, um, we all have credit card bills. We have all monthly bills that we pay for credit cards, right? And we pay it on time, okay? Which means that we make sure that it's on time so then your credit score doesn't go down, right? But the thing is, you still have the revolving credit going on. So it's hard to say that it's a good or a bad debt, right? I mean, we do want to pay off your credit card, obviously, but there are other unfortunate people who are not able to. So how do we, I don't know, fix that, or how do we correct that? Because it's an ongoing cycle, right? Because there's a lot of people that I know that it's been having for the last 20 something years, and they're just going in circles.
Definitely. I would say that looking overall at the whole financial picture of that family is something very essential. Why? To identify where are the holes that money is leaking out. These could be anywhere from paying too high of interest rates on a mortgage. They could be anywhere to, for example, now, even paying too much in their car insurance. Identifying different areas where some costs they can be reduced and diminished in order to create room to start encountering and facing this route to our debt-free path can ultimately help. And let's just say maybe one card was paid off and you have other ones, you're thinking, where do I start? Well, maybe just starting with that same payment, even if it's small, can help attack those interest rates so the debt doesn't double and triple over time.
Now, so guys, friends, keep in mind, your good debt is just the way she said. Is the you got your mortgage equity coming in, right, and you're saving in your bucket as per se you're putting it in your pocket. The credit debt is a yes, it's a bad debt. We want to pay it off as quickly as possible. Let's say, for example, your monthly for credit card at that time minimum is 130 bucks. You put in 150. That extra 20 will closely close your credit. Yes, just make sure you don't use your credit card. So I mean, that's your bad debt. But money is king, right? I mean, that's cash is king. So let me ask you another question now. Overwhelming choices here with life insurance. So tell me about life insurance. Is
That
it
is,
is it a good thing to invest in, or is it a bad thing to invest in?
oh, that's a wonderful question. I will have to go back to saying it depends, but I would say that there are many underlooked features. There are some people that we think about, oh, many successful figures today, they paint a strong financial healthy backbone with stocks and gaining a return. Well, yes, they are a component of building that path for wealth. Life insurance has actually helped people from the days of Stanford's founder. They helped people from actually Walt Disney. They couldn't get loans from their own personal bank. So they utilized these vehicles and leveraged them in a way to build that future they desired. And to backtrack a little bit, a lot of times when I think about insurance, I used to be one of these people myself. I thought, oh, there's only one type, like my car insurance. I use it or lose it. However, it's interesting to know that just like the evolution of iPhones, there are two types in terms of there is temporary coverage, just like renting a home, and then there's permanent, which would be equivalent to similar to owning a home, where you can build equity. And even within this permanent umbrella, there's 4 different types. It has evolved over time, and many of the features of today's modern insurance, they do allow for excellent growth with some tax sheltering benefits that many people maybe they may not qualify at their stage in life to own a Roth. However, leveraging one of these tools could help position them for some great tax savings.
So basically you're saying life insurance is good if you're stable and and you can afford it.
I think there is a different type of life insurance for depending on each individual situation. Then it
So
can definitely help.
so I want to make sure that my friends are understand this, that life insurance is affordable for many different uh, classes around us. Okay, now you have to understand there's one person who will spend, I'm just giving an example, $600, $400. There's other ones which are less, but then just keep in mind that whatever you put in, it depends on what type of plan you get back. So just keep that in mind. And when you plan that out, plan it ahead of time. Don't do it as of today's date. Today, maybe you might not have money, but then tomorrow you will. You want to plan ahead. Just don't plan it for today, plan it for your future. So the other thing is, do you think from a youngster point of view, teenage point of view, do you think saving later is better or saving now is better for these teenagers?
I have many great friends that they're some of them in high tech industries. They have very high paying careers and they didn't always believe in starting to invest and save earlier. They said, I will wait. I'm going to wait until I have a higher paying role, until I get the promotion. And then what happens is say, you know what, I actually should wait maybe until I'm married. And then I want to wait until I have kids because then it makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a mortgage now. Oh, it's too late. However, after working with families from over 15 different countries, I have found that the earlier is really more beneficial because the compounding effect, and as we see here, the seventh wonder of the world, Albert Einstein referred to as compound interest, shines bright for those that take proactive choices earlier than later. And to give you a more solid example, let's just say there's two families. They save, okay, I'm going to save 10 bucks a day. So $300 a month. But one of them decides to do that same action 7 years later. And let's just say you're starting at 25. When you look at the overall progress and growth, family B, to get the same result as family A, they had to invest roughly 2.5 times the same amount to have the same outcome at the end because he started 7 years later. So ultimately, procrastination, it does have its consequences.
But with that example, is there a target that we should be reaching out to, or do we say target for, let's say, age 18, because that's when they're adults, right?
So ultimately, I would say that as soon as this person, they're able to have a secure stream of income, whether this be W-2, W-9, this could be a role after they have finished their education years, or even if they're in school, but they have a solid stream of income in terms of maybe even working in a family business. 10% is roughly, depending on that person's situation, it's a great place to start. Even if it's maybe less, but it's the habit. It is the habit that is ultimately being inculcated in that young professional's health.
So before we get to the next topic, I just want to tell the friends that um, saving is key. Money in your pocket is key. Cash is key. So just keep in mind, let me give you an example that someone has told me, and I read this somewhere. If you spend at least $7 or $8 of not drinking coffee or not even smoking a cigarette, okay, now just keep that in mind. That's every day and every time that you purchase, times by whatever, you will get at least a good amount of money in your pocket. That's your savings. So that's just one example. It could be another example of you not going on vacation one year. Okay. Like today, like in COVID's time, you're not spending that much money, but then you're spending somewhere else. That, cash is key. You gotta plan ahead for that. So, Kristen, so now the other question now is college saving. Do you think putting money on the side for, let's say, my kids, or do we put it under our name for their future? Because there's a lot of a myth between this, right? For example, if I put it under my kid's name, then they will not get the loan later on. Is that a myth, or is that a truth?
That actually, if you are expecting to count on that financial support, and it's very interesting because a lot of families, when we touch on that FAFSA portion of filling out that area for financial aid, any assets that are under your child's name, they definitely will count against their eligibility to qualify for financial aid. So, especially we think about saving, this is something that is so precious. You work so hard and sacrifice so much to provide them that bright educational outlook, that definitely putting it in the parent's name can contribute to having some more opportunities to not have as much out of funds or out of pocket contribution.
So, so you're saying 529 is a good plan for the kids if you have extra cash on you to do that.
I would say definitely depends, because some people they maybe reach a point where they want to find a startup company, or
Okay.
they're stellar in a certain particular field, or they just see themselves with a different mission. So some people maybe even in entertainment sector. So maybe there are other options, exploring other alternatives that allow a little bit more flexibility, where it doesn't strictly have to be used for college. And maybe even the parent has some access. They could definitely allow some further flexibility.
So, friends, you have to understand there's no right and wrong answer. It's everyone's point of view, but you have to do your homework when you try to cash out your 529 if you are able to. Or for whatever reason, maybe you want to transfer that to an IRA or a Roth. Okay. But just keep in mind, everyone's needs are different. Everyone's target for these items or this 529 is very different. So let me ask you another question now regarding, I mean, it's a big, huge topic, retirement. Okay. It's a small word, but it's actually a big topic, right? So when should we get aggressive and when we should not for 401k?
That is a wonderful question. In terms of being more exposed to that market volatility, ideally, we're putting in an approximate range. I would say the cutoff point is maybe after 40, 45, depending on what that person has built previously, but no later than around that curve. Um, Most likely the risk should be significantly reduced as the time comes closer. I know some people also, depending when they want to retire, is a great factor to take in consideration. Some people, they do take 65 as still the standard. Other people say 70. In that case, you can maybe bear that risk a little bit later until you're 50. So it just depends overall what your personal benchmark is for retirement and your goal that you want to start cranking and cranking down and slowing down the velocity of your passion.
But with the things going on around us, with expenses going up, okay, just like the example that I said in the beginning, before it was $1 bread, and now we have $3-4 of bread. Okay, I'm just giving you a small example, but I'm pretty sure there are other ones too. But does that mean that my 401k money has to be much higher, or my target needs to be higher? Because you know what? Back in the days, we were thinking maybe 200k should be enough, but I don't think it is, right? Because you have mortgage also, and then within those to retirement times, I'm pretty sure you'll buy a new car also. So so how do we plan that out?
So, an excellent consideration to take in mind that I found when supporting a particular family several years ago was that they said, oh, you know what? I maxed out $19,000. And she was so joyful. This lady, she worked for a high-tech firm and also had been taking advantage of some stocks previously in her younger years. And we realized, however, that today's retirement planning involves also careful tax planning. And what does this mean? When you allocate so much or such a significant portion in an area that it's going to be significantly taxed at a bracket that is unknown, there is a high risk going on in terms of we don't know how much you're going to be able to count on. And how do we counteract this? One way that a lot of my friends and clients have found helpful is to ultimately look at retirement more about in 3 tax buckets. Think about, okay, I'm going to have a certain income stream coming from vehicles that are taxable. I'm going to have a second income stream that are going to be taxed later. So maybe like my 401k, if my employer is particularly matching me. If they're not matching though, it might be a good idea to reconsider where that funds can be redirected. And then the third area that a lot of my corporate warriors maybe have overlooked is the tax-free area. So taking a closer look at the vehicles, anywhere from leveraging a Roth IRA to potentially a Roth 401k or even life insurance, they can help to create some balance and more certainty for that uncertain outlook that can occur in retirement.
So some of the employers I've heard that they are offering Roth, including their 401k. Now, that means that I can put money into my Roth, yes, but it looks like they're going to chunk a whole bunch of taxes out. I'd rather have my taxes out now than later. Is that a true statement?
Are you referring to in terms of, I would like to clarify a little bit about that. If your employer is offering you a Roth 401k
Yes,
compared to a traditional 401k, is
that is
that your,
correct.
okay, wonderful. So the magical word about Roth is that ultimately the contributions and the growth that is withdrawn later, unlike a traditional 401k, is not going to be taxed. You're not going to pay your share to the IRS. So if your company does offer that option, I highly do suggest to take a look at those mutual fund options, take a look at it and do consider shifting over, because the benefits in the long term, they could provide you more in your pocket versus a traditional 401k.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. So now let's go to the lighter side of things, right? If I rent a house or rent an apartment, am I throwing my money away?
Oy, I think it also depends on the stage of life that you are doing so. I am aware some millennials, some people maybe on the younger age bracket,
Mhm.
maybe they split up the rent they do with different people. They rent a large house. So they contribute different areas. And then on their own personal aspect, they maybe allocate that money into their own personal investments. So in that way, they are building equity. However, if let's just say that family is maybe have kids, they're a little bit more settled in life, they're looking from 30s above, I would say that owning a home provides so many advantages as a homeowner, just to be able to have that peace of mind and also create that even emotional legacy for your children. It offers some wonderful memories, in addition to, of course, the fiscal benefits of all
So,
the write-offs.
so guys, just keep in mind that there are many, many different answers to this, right? Because it all depends on different stages of life. But just keep in mind that what she has mentioned just now, above 30, yeah, maybe you want to invest on something, but just keep in mind that you're building a investment, you're building a legacy, you're building a equity. Okay, that's more towards you when you sell your home or when you get cash. It's more investment, and I think it's a safe bet depending on where you're buying. So yeah, that is a good insight to that. Now, any other items that we think that we have missed today, and you from your back to basic moment?
I would say that looking back, one thing that many parents, I believe one of the greatest gifts they can bestow upon their kids, in addition to numerous financial strategies, that is priceless, is instilling within them empowering beliefs about money. Myself, I was looking back, I realized that a lot of the habits that I had, especially when my income started exponentially growing when I was in real estate, I was duplicating the patterns that my parents had. And also, my perception of my finances depended a lot on the habits that my own parents had instilled in me. So, there's one thing that as a parent, or even maybe as a mentor, that you can bring and share to the table is to please have empowering beliefs about money. And one way is just the way we speak and we see it as it. If we see ourselves as mere distributors rather than, a lot of times we think about, maybe you've heard the quote, the love of money is the root of all evil. And a lot of people, because they are afraid and they don't want to be evil, wicked, or perceived as a bad person, they shy away from opportunities or even learning about how to grow and use and leverage this tool for the good of others. So, our communication and our perception can do so much for those around us. So, that's essentially my last thought and what I want to touch base upon in that area.
Okay, and then one last thing before we let you go. Uh, do you have any recommendations for any book that people could read out and regarding money or regarding any finance or any fun book?
Absolutely. So, one of my personal favorites is The Power of Zero by David McKnight. He touches upon how powerful it is to have a tax free retirement.
Yes,
That
I
is,
read that, and it's a very good book. So, so we're done. Thank you so much for the today's episode and being on this show, and it makes me honored for having you on there.
thank you. Thank you. I highly appreciate the opportunity, Girish, and I'm so grateful.
Thank you so much. So, guys, we have talked about finance, we talked about savings, we talked about everything else. So, there's one quote, as always, at the end of the show. I always say a quote. Rule number one, never lose money. Rule number two, never forget rule number one. That's by Warren Buffett. And I'm telling you, if you follow that rule, it's just you can't, there's no end for money at all. Money is king, money in the pocket is king, and it'll make you happy at the end of the day. So, guys, as always, enjoy the episodes and keep on listening, keep on subscribing. And at the end of the episode, as I always say, everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today. Thank you, guys. See you next week. Next week's episode on Back to Basics.
Your resume is your first impression. As much as like here in California, there's a lot of protections for employees, potential employees, called protected class. And anyone who knows anything about that, that's your age, your religion, your race, your gender, marital status, all of that, that's off limits. Employers can't ask it. I mean, some of that stuff becomes obvious as you're